Welcome to The Good Pod. I'm Charlotte, brought to you by Bible Theology Ministries. We explore Christian topics, theology, and Bible truth. You'll also find hymns, Bible studies, and God's promises on our YouTube page. Today's episode is called This Cup, presented by Dr. KB Napier. Visit christiandoctrine.com or email info@christiandoctrine.com to learn more.
Matthew 26, verses 39 and 42 say this, "And he went a little further, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. Then he went away again the second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done." And Mark 14:36 has this, "And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt." This is also found in Luke 22:42. Now, was Jesus terrified of dying? Was he trying to stop his coming violent end? Was he asking the Father to somehow forego his sacrifice and death? No, none of these reasons were in Jesus' mind. All I am doing is following the biblical clues. Now in Matthew 26:38, Christ tells his disciples that his soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. In verse 41, he advises the tired disciples to be careful not to fall into temptation by letting physical tiredness overcome their spiritual desires. He tells them something we all know to be true, that whilst our spiritual intent is good and godly, our bodies and minds can let us down. Oh, how often this happens. That statement by Christ proves he is not trying to evade his own death. He had come as a baby precisely to grow up in this world, to experience what we go through, and to finally die at a young age. This text tells us Jesus was warning his followers to be aware of what they believe and do, and not to let their weak bodies succumb to their own human failings. Jesus, on the other hand, had a perfect body, free of sin and of any physical encumbrances, but even he could get tired. In a few hours he would be beaten, violently injured, to such an extent that he was unrecognizable even to his own mother and followers. But his spirit was firm and without flaw. He was and is very God, as well as very man. He could not sin by seeking an escape from his own eternal will, to come to earth to die. To think that he was afraid to die is to misunderstand who Christ was and is. It was not possible for him to escape, because to do so would be to destroy himself as God and cancel his own will, making his pronouncements a lie. What then was going on? He said if, or I, a particle of conditionality. It can also be termed as whether, or if accordingly, or if in consequence. His words are not about trying to find an excuse to stop his coming death, but was a figure of speech or rhetorical plea that expressed his utter horror. Horror of what? Not of his own death. Thus we may easily paraphrase, whether or not you remove my cup, that is, his coming experience of loss of human life, it is your will that must be done, not mine. A short while later, Jesus came back to the disciples after praying something slightly different to the Father. If this cup does not pass away from me, it doesn't matter, because it is your will. So again he uses a rhetorical statement finished with a statement of the Father's will. And to accomplish his will requires him, the Son, to die on the cross. The emphasis in Mark is different but yet similar. Yes, it is possible for God to do anything he wishes, so if he wished he could stop what was happening. But the Son knew this was not possible in reality, for the slightest change would mean God's word was untrue, and his will was malleable, which is impossible. After this rhetorical muse, Jesus repeated that what was going to happen was the Father's and his own will. So what's the conclusion? Look at these texts in the light of both what is said and what is biblically and theologically true. It was not possible for Christ to cast aside his own declared reason as God for coming to earth as a child, to grow into a man and to die. It was casting gold in heaven, in eternity, and God cannot change his mind. And Christ, of course, is God. As God, Christ was not afraid of death, because God cannot die anyway. But as a man, Jesus, he was filled with grief, but not concerning his death. What he feared was the cutting off from the Father. It might only have been a split second, but as I have shown elsewhere, just a mere moment without God is sufficient to destroy the whole of creation, because everything and everyone relies totally on the continuous power of God to survive. So, what Jesus as man was afraid of was this void in which he was not connected to the Father, even if for an imperceptibly short time. Yet he is himself God, so cannot fear his own plan for mankind. But as a human being, he was terrorized by the thought of temporarily being cut off from the Father. Plus, on top of that, he was aware that the full brunt of all sin committed by all men in all ages would be heaped onto his back, making him guilty. No one can imagine what this must have felt like. This was his human reason to wish the experience could go away. Death itself was not the issue, coming as it did through great violence and hatred. But being parted from the Father was greater than he wanted to bear. He gladly died for the elect, but he had no wish to be separated from the Father, even for the briefest of moments.